It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs and Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking now, ladies and gentlemen. A secret meeting. I mean, really, it sounds quite interesting until you realise it was about Brexit. People are saying that this was the first and next step, shall we say, in Brexit being betrayed. Is it? Was it? Do you think people really want Brexit to succeed? I have my own suspicions on that. And business rates, the thorn in many a side, especially when you compare it to online businesses. Unfair, perhaps, advantage there. But should they be scrapped altogether? And if you think, yes, they should, what are you going to do then to replace the tens of billions of pounds that they raise? Your thoughts on that, please? And the government procurement card, do you know what that is? It is Labour's field day today. They've done a big dossier, ladies and gentlemen, and if you've not read it, what have you been doing with your day? Ask yourself that. They have exposed, I tell you, thousands upon thousands of pounds of your money being wasted, providing luxuries, so they have. What do you make to it? What should we have our officials doing then when they travel? Do we want them staying in, for example, the travel lodge as opposed to decent places? What do you make of it? Are they all as bad as each other? And did you see the awful scenes in Liverpool? I mean, you can't miss them, really. You've seen riot van being burnt out, the police being attacked. Of course, within seconds of the protest starting, it was declared a far-right protest. Parents, of course, just wanting to keep their kids safe, that refers to. What do you make make to it all? Give me your thoughts. We'll have it all, but first, let's bring ourselves up to speed, shall we, with tonight's latest headlines with a legend that is Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight, Downing Street is refusing to comment on spy balloons potentially being spotted over the UK. That comes after the United States shot down a fourth object over its territory in just over 1 week. Well, here, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has announced the UK will now review its airspace security, and Rishi Sunak says the country has the military capability to deal with anything in the nation's skies.
We have something called the Quick Reaction Alert Force, which involves Typhoon planes, which are kept on 24/7 readiness to police our airspace, which is incredibly important. I can't obviously comment in detail on national security matters, but we're in constant touch with our allies. And as I said, we'll do whatever it takes to keep the country safe.
Rescuers in southern Turkey have saved several children today, a full week after devastating earthquakes shook the region. A 13-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl were among those pulled out alive from the rubble of collapsed buildings, having been buried for more than 180 hours. The number of people that have died in both Turkey and Syria, though, has risen to more than 37,000, as officials say the window to find any remaining survivors is closing. And an appeal by the UK's Disasters Emergency Committee has so far raised more than £60 million. NATO has said today that a new Russian offensive in Ukraine has already started. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said he sees no signs of Russia preparing for peace, as Moscow has been sending yet more troops and weapons in. He believes Ukraine now needs fighter jets and long-range missiles to counter any new attack and to recapture lost territory.
The most important message is that we see no sign whatsoever that President Putin is preparing for peace or ready to negotiate something which will respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. What we see is that President Putin and Russia still wants to control Ukraine.
Here, the family of a teenager who was stabbed to death in Cheshire has been paying tribute to her. 16-year-old Brianna Gay was found with serious injuries near Warrington on Saturday afternoon. Her family described her as strong, fearless and one of a kind. A boy and a girl, both 15 years old, have been arrested on suspicion of murder and are being questioned by police. Now, as you've been hearing, taxpayers' money is said to have been wasted, with Labour accusing the government of a lavish spending culture. The party has analysed the use of so-called government procurement cards, GPCs, and it's found Foreign Office officials spent almost £345,000 wining and dining in 2021. Labour says 14 major Whitehall departments spent at least £145 million using the cards across the year. Shadow Levelling Up Minister Alex Norris says the government has been careless with public money.
We've revealed today is a culture of a government that's very, very casual with the public's money. As we talk, businesses up and down the country are opening up. And we know those businesses will be very hard on the money that they spend as the cost of their operations, because they have to be. We would take that same approach, that same level of rigour, because you look at some of the things we've revealed. Did the government really need to spend that money on theatre training? Did they really need those pictures from the Tate Gallery?
Well, Parliamentary Under-Secretary for the Department of Transport, Richard Holden, has been defending the government. He says the spending hasn't been reckless.
What we've tried to do is introduce some real transparency into this sector. So in 2012, we publish on a monthly basis now all expenditure over £500 on the government procurement cards. That's all available for your viewers on the government's website on gov.uk. So that's what we're trying to do, greater transparency. That's why we've seen that massive fall since the last time Labour were in office on this, but we've always got to keep an eye on it.
Now, did you see it last night? A meteor caught on camera lighting up the sky above the English Channel. A fireball with hints of yellow and green could be seen just before 3 a.m. That's after the European Space Agency spotted the object, saying it was expected to land safely in the Earth's atmosphere. It's only the 7th time an asteroid impact has been predicted and captured on camera. Now, as we've been hearing the last half hour, the breaking news from Buckingham Palace that the Queen Consort has tested positive for COVID after suffering from what she thought were cold symptoms earlier in the week. GB News understands Camilla remains in good spirits and is resting, and is said to be very disappointed she's unable to make this week's engagements across the country. Camilla was forced to postpone a visit to the West Midlands earlier today. We wish her well. That's it from me. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. You're with GB News. Now back to the legend that is Michelle Dewbs.
Whoa, a little bit of mutual legend loving. I like that. Thank you very much. Polly, yes, this is Dewbs & Co. I am Michelle Dewbs and I am keeping you company until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, Daniel Moylan is the Conservative peer in the House of Lords, and Kevin Craig is a former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR. Hello.
Hello, Michelle.
I don't know what I was going to say then.
You're OK?
I am all right. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not really. I've got an ulcer right on the tip of my tongue.
Oh,
it's absolutely killing me and causing me to speak with a lisp today. But other than that, I'm absolutely fine. And I push on. I'm a trooper.
Well done.
I come to work regardless. What did we make some of those headlines, by the way? All these strange things spotted in the skies. Are you frightened? Anything to do with UFOs?
I don't think they're aliens. No, I think they're Chinese. And the worrying thing is that there's a bunch of people in China at the top who believe that the right way to approach relations with the West is to take provocative and aggressive actions. So this sort of, we know we shouldn't do this, but let's get on and do it, give them a scare, see what happens, and see what we get away with. Excuse me, Michelle, is very much the attitude of China, and it's very worrying because it's not the way civilised countries conduct themselves.
Very worrying. Are you worried, Kevin Craig?
I've been reminded of the vulnerability that we have to intrusions into our airspace, and I'm greatly reassured by the fact that we've got a great military.
Well, yeah, well, you say we've got a great military. Many people would say it's very underfunded right now, isn't it? You tell me, what do you make of all this stuff flying in our skies? Concerning or not? Get in touch with me tonight. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email, or you can tweet me at gbnews. Lots to discuss with you guys tonight. Brexit. Is it all kind of, have you heard about the secret meetings going on? They don't sound that riveting, I have to say, but nonetheless, some people are saying this is Brexit, the attempts to overthrow Brexit. Is it? And have you seen these government procurement cards as well? What do you make to them? Labour are having a field day today, I tell you. There's a website set up and everything, all about the amount of money being wasted by people on frivolous things, such as photo booths was one of the examples cited. Also, as well, business rates. Is it time to scrap them? And if you're shouting yes at your telly or your radio, can you tell me what you're going to do to raise the funds that we currently receive from those business rates? And did you see the situation over in Liverpool? Of course, in response to some of the goings on there, some of the allegations about people propositioning schools kids. Do you think that it's time now that the government get a hold of this hotel situation, their policy? And if so, what do they do about it? And by the way, I can't help but notice any time any of these protests even commence, they're immediately described as far right. I really don't think that's very accurate, do you? Anyway, let's get into our first story then, shall we? Brexit. There was a secret meeting, I tell you, a two-day meeting. It got people together from apparently both sides of the fence. The former Brexit negotiator, Lord Frost, he wasn't invited though. Many people are saying it was all about an attempt to overthrow Brexit. It was the first to sell out. It's like a sellout, the first step. Well, I say the first step, that's an under-exaggeration. Many people would say there's been many steps so far. Daniel Moylan, where are you on it?
Yeah, well, it was all organised by Peter Mandelson, and I think that tells you everything. He's still, of course, in receipt of an EU pension, and he has taken an oath of loyalty to the European Union, which is still valid, and his pension depends on it. So it was all organised by Peter Mandelson. There's no doubt at all, and the most depressing thing about it is that these people see the problems facing the country, and we are facing problems. And instead of thinking, we can solve it, we, Britain, we British people can solve our problems, the first thing they do, like a dog back to his vomit, is say, we need to get closer to the EU. And that's really what this is all about. If they wanted a 2-day meeting about the challenges facing this country, if they wanted to talk about the difficulties we have with high interest rates and what should be done about them, the difficulties of people getting, being able to buy homes as opposed to being constant private renters, if they wanted to talk about the serious issues facing the country, fixing the NHS and so on, that would have been great. But what do they want to talk about? How we can make love to the European Union. Nobody in the European Union is holding meetings to find out what we want in Britain. The only way to get close to the European Union is to do what they want. They've made that very clear. And that's what these people are lining us up for.
Doesn't wash with Lord Moylan. Kevin Craig, thoughts?
Well, very strong views from Lord Moylan there. And let's remind ourselves that this gathering was cross-party. So you had Liberal Democrats, Labour, and in particular Labour and Conservative politicians there. Michael Gove was there.
Didn't dare tell the Prime Minister, though, did he?
Well, I know, but I think the Prime Minister now knows, and as the Prime Minister's spokesman said, he found out from the newspapers. I don't think we should be worried, Michelle, because what this looks like to me was a cross-party gathering of well-intentioned people with no desire to try and overturn Brexit, right? That wasn't the point of the gathering. It was to ask the question, how can we as a cross-party group of people try and make this work better? And what is in the strategic and national interest of this country in terms of our relations with the EU? Lots of people have got very aerated today. I see that Nigel Farage has been calling it a sellout, but it isn't. It's basically saying, look, at risk of opening up old wounds here, personally, I don't think Brexit's going particularly well, and at least you have some serious politicians informally getting together to discuss it. And if Daniel is this aerated, I trust he's going to be writing to Michael Gove and asking for his resignation then for what he's done.
In terms of the positioning of this meeting, by the way, the title of this meeting was How Can We Make Brexit Work Better with Our Neighbours in Europe?
There we are.
A confidential introductory statement, though, for those at the meeting, said basically, for some at least, that so far the UK has not yet found its way forward outside the EU, with Brexit acting as a drag on our growth and inhibiting the UK's potential. My issue with that is if you want to be this cross-party group and all the rest of it, and truly your objective is how do we make the UK prosper going forward, to start with the position that, you know, Brexit basically is dragging us down, that is not an optimistic, positive, forward-thinking set of people.
No, it isn't. No, and you just have to ask, I mean, you know, Kevin says you're not these reasonable people there. David Lammy was there.
Great man.
David Lammy.
Great guy.
David
Great
Lammy,
bloke.
who went almost hysterical and off this planet in his opposition to Brexit, at times talking like he was a complete nutter. I know he's become more respectable again now, and I know he was respectable when he was a younger man. But he had this period of complete lunacy over Brexit where he lost the plot completely. So they invite him. And of course, there were some Brexit supporters there, but we have to be clear, not all Leavers obviously have different political views, and so do Remainers, when they might agree on Brexit and disagree on other things. Michael Gove has always been happy with the Theresa May deal. He was always happy with it. He always supported it. That was a deal which was overwhelmingly rejected 3 times by Parliament, which would have left us in very close alignment to the European Union, accepting their laws without actually having any say in them. So, I mean, I don't entirely trust Michael Gove. Now, I'm not going to ask for his resignation because I think the Prime Minister, having been sufficiently insulted by this behaviour on the part of a Cabinet Minister, will want to take his own steps. But, I mean, there we are. I think this is completely what it seems on the can.
Okay.
Mandelson, Gove, I'm afraid the whole lot, you can't trust them.
OK.
Not on this issue.
Well, look, let me just go back to Michelle.
That oath of loyalty, remember?
Michelle, your point there about starting the debate off very negatively.
It was a good point, wasn't it?
Well, it was a fair point because it's your opinion, but it's also a statement of fact because many people, there were Brexiteers at this meeting, but it's a statement of fact that Brexit so far hasn't worked. Investment is down, the economy's contracted, there hasn't been the investment in the NHS. I think...
There's been vast investment in the NHS. Look, at the end of the day...
Not as a result of Brexit. It's been a total
Right.
Disaster.
So Brexit was voted for. Point number one, it was never the outcome of that referendum, despite it being very clearly documented that you would follow on with whatever the outcome was. We spent goodness knows how long messing around because people refused to accept what the outcome was. So that was point one. God knows how many years we waited on that. Point number two, since then, we've shut down our economy essentially for what for most people was a cold, but I won't get into that one. But we've closed down our economy.
That's rubbish.
We've closed down our economy, rubbish. So we've made ourselves, take backward steps. Point one. Also, we're putting up our corporation tax. We've just seen a company, I think it was last week now, AstraZeneca, saying that they're not going to choose the UK. Instead, they're going to go over to Ireland to set up their new premise because of things like no, they didn't reference Brexit.
Tax. Do you think it helped?
Well, why don't you ask the guy that made the decision who directly quoted the tax regime in this country? He didn't reference Brexit, so why do you?
Well, I suspect that Brexit has something to do with it. And also, are we still calling COVID-19 pandemic? Are we still calling it a cold?
No, what I said was, for most people, it was no worse than a cold.
I know, but the way you talk about it sometimes is so trivial and sort of casting it aside as if it wasn't a major pandemic.
The responses that this country chose to make in response to COVID were absurd. When you look at the situation now, the mess that the economy is in, the fact that we're pretty much teetering onto recession, albeit not quite there yet, we've got excess deaths sky high. I would say that actually people should be sitting there looking backwards and feeling a little bit embarrassed about how ridiculous they were when it came to closing down this country. Yeah, I do think that.
Well, I don't want to cause you any offence, but I'm really glad you weren't in charge during the pandemic.
You won't offend me. Well, I'm a tough northern girl. I've got thick skin.
I'm just saying it because we're being nice to each other this year on this show, aren't we?
Yeah, you won't offend me. It takes a lot more than that, I can tell you. What do you make to this at home? Do you want a final word on the Brexit thing, Daniel?
Yeah, I think you've got to watch out very carefully because we will be back under EU law very soon, especially if Starmer comes back. That's what he means when he says make Brexit work. He means make it work for the European Union.
No, he means listen to the British people.
And that's where we're going to be.
I think, and look, I really do respect you guys, Daniel. I just want to say, I do respect the differences on Brexit. I really do. I'd never agreed with it. I think it's been a disaster, but I can assure you that Keir Starmer has no intention of overturning a recent vote of the British people and genuinely wants to make it work.
He tried to. He spent a whole year trying to. When he was working for Corbyn.
His very clear position now is to move on and make it work, hence this meeting.
Yeah.
What do you think to it? Do you sit there and say, yes, it's absolutely fantastic that we're having these kind of meetings and the objective is absolutely positive, optimistic, and the intention is definitely to help the UK prosper in this Brexit Britain world? Or do you perhaps think it might be something a little bit different? gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. You can tweet me as well at Michelle Dewbs. Give me your thoughts. Let's stick with the world of business, shall we? Because there's been very loud calls for business rates essentially to be reformed, some would say scrapped. What do you make to this? And if you are in the camp of scrapping them, how will you make up the difference? So I think it's about 20-odd billion that they raise. Where are you going to get that money from? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Good evening, wherever you are watching or listening. You're very welcome tonight. Keeping me company is Daniel Moylan, the Tory peer in the House of Lords, and Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and CEO of communications company PLMR. Also a man that thinks I frequently talk nonsense. Is that fair?
It is fair, Michelle, but, you know, you do it very nicely.
Well, we don't mind, do we? We have all views are welcome here on Dewbs & Co. I like a little bit of debate, so I do. Michelle, why are people still going on about Brexit? We had a vote, and like it or not, Brexit won. Why don't people just get on with getting the country back on its feet, says Ian. Here. I completely agree with you. Mark says, all I can say is democracy, democracy, democracy. If this country was democratic, this Brexit business would have been put to bed by now. Yes, but Mark, there are many people that will say it isn't yet a raging success. And what they would say is that they're trying their hardest to make it so. Does it wash with you? Give me your thoughts. Let's carry on our conversation, shall we, about business. The British Chamber of Commerce is calling on the government basically to overhaul its business rates. Basically, they've come up with a set of goals that they want Jeremy Hunt to achieve by the spring budget. It covers all different stuff, so childcare, for example, costs. But one of the ones that really jumped out to me, Kevin, is about business rates. We go around this circle often, don't we? People will say that, for example, if you've got 2 competing organisations, one's got a bricks and mortar shop, the other one's just online. The online one is in an advantageous position because it doesn't have to contend with the physical business rates. What do you think?
And I think you're right, Michelle. And I think, I mean, business rates, they have worked well for hundreds of years. And it's only, in my view, particularly the last 20 years, it's become a very, very challenging system for businesses. A lot of smaller shops do feel aggrieved that bigger companies, e.g. over time Amazon, do not pay as much tax in terms of their overall size of company. The problem with business rates is that they are, I mean, businesses are finding it tough. Some people, perhaps our noble Lord, may say, if you can't afford it, the business deserves to fail. But we then, as a result, have a very sort of monolithic high street, a lack of diversity in shops, and I think business rates do need reform. I think they need to move quicker for if property valuations change. But if we're going to reform it, then we do have to make sure we identify where that additional income comes from. You know.
So, but in principle, if we made some tweaks or whatever to the way it's valued and calculated at the moment, as a principle, you're not opposed to them?
No, because I think they're there for a very good reason. Businesses need to contribute to the communities in which they're located. Do
you agree with that, Lord Moylan?
There's a complicated thing to say about business rates because they look like they're a tax on the businesses that occupy the property. But actually, economically, they are a tax on the shop, on the property owner. Because if the business rates were taken away, let's say they were scrapped altogether or reduced considerably, then the businesses would be able to pay more rent, and in a competitive market, the landlords would demand more rent. So over time, as their leases ran out, the transfer of value would not be to the business, it would be to the property owner. And it was one of the biggest transfers of value to property owners in the history of Britain, and for nothing, just for owning a property. And I think it's very, very dangerous, these people who say we should get rid of business rates and it will help businesses. It might immediately while their rents are still fixed in their lease. But the moment those leases run out and they'll be competing for space with other people, they will end up being willing and able, bidding up the rents because that's what their business can afford. They will not get the benefit long term, the property owner will. Why? Why should we reform a tax system to give that benefit to property owners when what we actually want to do is benefit businesses? And one of the best way of benefiting businesses is to cut corporation tax, the tax on their profits, which is what we should be focusing on, not business rates.
Two things. So if I just first of all come back at you in terms of the rates, isn't that quite an assumption that you're making there?
Yes.
So if someone, let's just say if someone pays, I'm being silly with my figures, but £500 a month, and they suddenly don't need to do that, that is quite an assumption that that landlord would then say, you used to be able to afford 500 quid, so now I'm going to take the 500 quid off you. That's an assumption.
No, he won't say that, and he won't be able to say that because they've probably got a fixed lease for a number of 2 or 3 years, whatever, 5 years, where their rent is fixed. You can't put the rent
No,
up.
I know that, but we're talking end of term.
Come the end of the term, then he'll say, right, well, we can put this out to the market again. We'll see what people are willing to bid for your shop. And if I get someone who'll pay more, I'll take them. And you'll find people who are able to pay more because they no longer have to calculate what the business rates are. And he'll turn around and he'll say, I've got these other offers. Are you willing to match them, or would you like to find premises somewhere else?
And corporation
So that's how it works. That's how markets actually work.
Corporation tax, you just said it should be lowered. Currently 19%, expected to go up to 25%. What would you have them at then? What rate?
Well, I think we should be right down at 15% with corporation tax. But I really want to ask the question why businesses should pay tax on profits at all, when in fact the profits that they make in the end all go to people. So they all go to shareholders or out to people, and those taxes, those profits should be taxed in the hands of shareholders and not in the hands of businesses. I don't think businesses as such should be paying tax. It should be taxed as it leaves the company going out to shareholders in the form of income tax to the shareholders.
Radical thinking.
That's very radical.
Radical thinking.
Well, I mean, I would have to disagree on that one with Daniel, because I think that corporation tax is a huge chunk of what we need to pay for the country that we want to live in. And I think that as a tax, I don't think we can afford at the moment to put it down to that sort of level.
I'm not suggesting that we get less revenue. So we'll adjust the tax rates when people paid income tax.
But there seems to be an assumption of kind of trickle-down economics there, whereas if corporation tax is levied on the business entity, and most people don't like always paying tax. Sometimes it's a huge bill, but if it's going for the right things, I think it's OK.
Yes, going for profits. What we need in this country is more profits. We actually need a more profitable, more successful economy. That's the sort of economy that it can employ more people, pay higher wages, and we're not taxing the right things.
But you guys have been in. How long is it now?
Well,
about 12 years.
I can be in and disagree with the government on... I'm not in, but I mean, I'm not in government, but I disagree with the government about their tax policy. I'm quite open about doing that.
But correct me if I'm wrong as well, because, the memory is a bit rusty these days, but wasn't it Jeremy Hunt? Wasn't he campaigning for 15% corp tax when he was trying to be the leader? Am I right in that thinking?
I don't remember that.
I think I am right. It has been known that I've been wrong, so if I'm wrong, I take it on the chin. £68 billion per annum, that's what corporation tax raises. Yeah, it raises. 68 billion. It's the fourth receipt, the fourth biggest set of tax receipts in this country. You was take a breath there. Go on.
One thing, Michelle, I want to reassure people, and I say this as a business owner and founder, we are not overly punitively taxed in this country, in my humble opinion.
But I thought we had the highest tax burden since one of the wars.
But relative to other countries.
Wow. Would you pay more tax?
If I had trust in the government that it was going for the right things to make this country even better and even fairer, yes.
Would you?
They don't give you that slip on your tax demand, I'm afraid. Please pay if you think we're trustworthy.
Well, I mean...
No government does
Might
that.
I suggest it depends on one's personal views about who's in charge and how they're doing.
All right, so here we go. We want Sir Keir Starmer now. I mean,
Well, we're going to be talking about where these taxes are going
we
in
up?
just a couple of minutes. You've teed that up nicely for me. What was you going to say?
Well, I just wondered, Keir Starmer, just today, I think West Streeting is going to ban smoking in the country. I mean, my worry about Keir Starmer is we won't be allowed to do anything in this country except knock down statues and take a knee when he's in charge. Anyway, over to you.
Well, a lot of these statues are indeed far-right racist monuments or something, aren't they? Isn't that what we're told these days? Anyway, I'm going to take a very quick break. When I come back, I want to get some of your thoughts in because many of you have been in contact on some of those last stories that we've been doing. But I also want to move on to, have you seen Labour's expose today? Very proud of it they are. It's all about how your money, my money, taxpayers' money is being wasted, providing luxury. Is it? What's going on? We'll look at it in just a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Who, me?
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. Daniel Moylan is a Tory peer in the House of Lords, and Kevin Craig is a former Labour councillor and CEO of communications company PLMR. Just been chuckling because we do get some messages, so we do, about all of us, quite frankly. There's no one that gets off the hook lightly. If you want a message in about us, feel free, but keep it clean. I can't read anything rude out on national television, of course. Ian says, Michelle, I find the way that you seem to trivialise COVID-19 quite offensive. It is also very naive. I am so glad that you were not in charge of this country during COVID, says Ian. Yes, so am I. And I don't trivialise it, by the way. I think for many people it was very serious indeed. But I think this mass blanket shutdown of absolutely everything, as though the only thing that mattered at all was COVID, and to, you know, whatever with everything else, I think it was very foolish, very wrong, and I think we are going to reap the consequences of that for years and years to come. That is my opinion, and I absolutely accept that there are different opinions, all of them as valid, I am sure, as each other. You guys have been getting in touch. Hamble says, Dewbs, I love Mondays because Kevin and Lord Moylan are my 2 favourite guests. That's nice, isn't it?
That's nice.
I'm assuming that you didn't write that in, both of you, during the break.
Kevin's mum did.
Cheers,
That
Dad.
was Kevin's, yeah, cheers, Dad. I always say that. Let's have a look. Lots of you as well getting in contact about business rates. Well, you were, but I've just pressed a button and made it all disappear, so I don't know what I've just done to that. Apologies. On the Brexit one, lots of you getting in touch as well. A cross-party of Ramonas, says Don. The summit to reverse Brexit is just going as far as possible. We are not stupid. No, you are not. Richard says Brexit is doing fine, thanks. We're out. What is not to like? The rest is detail. Stop moaning. I'm not moaning. Les says this meeting you're referencing is an irrelevance and should be treated as such. Dawn says it's a pity that you, Michelle, apparently a tough northern girl, wasn't in charge during the seasonal cold pandemic. That's Dawn's opinion. I could tell you many others. Kevin, next to me, taking a big sigh there and biting his tongue, I could tell you. James says we should go for a full no-deal Brexit. It's the only way to make it work. And Ben Habib, he says, should be our Prime Minister. Right, Labour, they've been busy. Have you seen their new website today? They've done like a big expose about government procurement cards. What they're saying is essentially that the Tories are mugging us off and we are funding all kinds of luxuries and we shouldn't be. Lord Moylan, what's going on? What do you make to it all?
I think it's worth... Sorry. I think it's worth saying, Michelle, that it cost the government about £500,000 to answer all the questions that Labour put in under freedom of information in order to gather some of this really trivial and uninteresting stuff. Second thing to say is that most of this money was actually spent by and on civil servants. So, for example, the Ministry of Justice paying £4,000 for 850 branded USB cables for staff taking part in a virtual conference. I mean, that's all for staff, and a lot of this was for staff, pictures for offices, things like that. So I wouldn't want to pin this too much on ministers. And the third thing I'd say is that there must be an awful lot of very unhappy Labour shadow cabinet ministers at the moment, because with all this out there, they're now thinking, God, am I going to have to stay sofa surfing every time I go on a foreign trip or whatever, because I won't be able to stay in a proper hotel anymore, because now we've made it all embarrassing. Of course, ministers representing the government should be staying in appropriate accommodation because they represent a very great power. Britain is still the 5th, 6th largest economy in the world and a major military force.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Well, I think what's happening here, I mean, Daniel's complaining about the cost of scrutiny, basically, and of MPs. It was predominantly one called Emily Thornberry asking parliamentary questions. I mean, every opposition since time eternal asks questions of the government of the day. And one of the things that Labour hasn't been doing always in the past decade is effectively scrutinising the government. And all that's happened here is it's a bit of a warning shot to the government. They set the culture that civil servants follow. There were spending limits increased on cards that shouldn't have been, and it's basically saying spend every penny as if it was your own. Now, I like to be one of those people that doesn't think any party has a monopoly on wisdom. So, of course, people will point out in the past, under Labour governments, where there might have been money wasted, and they were subject to the same scrutiny. This is an opposition opposing and holding the government to account.
Angela Rayner, she's coming to a bit of stick today because she was furiously tweeting about it, and then people were actually saying, well, hang on, what about you? You've got these AirPod, like the top of the range that you could possibly get your mitts on. You know, you don't need them. Well, yeah, she did, because I think apparently she lost one. Yeah. Oh. So I would...
Rachel Reeves, back in 2015, apparently, had her access to credit at Parliament suspended because they couldn't work out what she'd spent it all on. And
yeah, she had one of her cards paused because I think some of the paperwork and stuff wasn't filled in.
Oh, is that it?
I think so, in the right way that it should have been. But I think that there is a sentiment that people often in public office, they do not spend money as if it was their own. And I think that you hear about all these, you know, it's just embarrassing, whether it's rolls of wallpaper costing 100 and odd quid or whatever it was, whether it's somebody buying the very top of the range kind of premier iPods. You don't need them. The only time you'd buy those kind of things if someone else was paying.
Yeah, look, I have seen Michelle, and I suspect that, you know, if Daniel Lord Moylan is speaking frankly, he has also seen it in his time in public life. There can be a tendency amongst some people when they've achieved some form of office, high or low, and it's not their money, to take the brakes off in how they spend it. And that's wrong. And I think that the public rightly want just accountability and things done carefully. For example, the Liz Truss lunch à trois for 3 people, 1,500 quid, wherever it was. Unnecessary. Right? Unnecessary.
Yeah, but hang on, though, because the flip side of this is if you are trying to, I don't know, showcase the best of Britain, you're not going to take these diplomats or whatever to the local Wetherspoons, are you? Maybe they should, but they're not going to do that, are they?
I think we'd get better policies. Maybe a pub with sort of different political leanings in the owner. But, yeah, I think in principle, take people out to normal places, you know, lunch at Greg's. But
you don't make your restaurant choices based on the political leanings of the establishment's owner, though, do you?
I would definitely wouldn't go for a drink with Witherspoons because of what he's been up to.
Why?
Because he's a leading voice. Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to go back there.
Well, you are missing out.
You'd have gone to a secret meeting, wouldn't you, to plot against the people of Britain who voted for Brexit?
Left and right wingers trying to do the right thing by the country.
You wouldn't go to Wetherspoons? Yes, you would.
No, well, I've avoided it lately. I used to take my dad there a lot, but after your man, what's his name, Tim?
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, it just, I didn't like... I mean, people often do that. Like, people change their consuming habits if they don't like what the man or woman at the top's doing.
But I don't really get that. I don't really...
Well,
you would stand on the high street, I don't know, you would sit there, maybe it's like Curry Monday or whatever. You could get a right good deal with a pint and a korma. I don't really eat curry, but I will eat a korma. And you'd sit there and go, no, that deal is not for me because the owner has a different view on Brexit to me. Really?
Well, I don't want to put any more profits into his pocket because I don't think he's a particularly good influence on public policy. That's all right.
He's a pub owner.
Hang on a minute.
He's a pub owner.
Here's an example. Loads of people have gone right off Elon Musk since his recent ups and downs, OK, with Twitter, and they don't like buying his cars, so they buy them off someone else.
That don't wash with me. No, it does not wash with me. All these people that sit there crying that because what you're on about is the fact that right-wing voices are allowed back on Twitter, having been censored for quite some time. And what happens is all these people start crying, going, right, I'm going to boycott your Teslas. No, you're not, because you probably couldn't have afforded a Tesla in the first place. Come on now, what you're doing is virtue signalling to pretend that you were going to buy this Tesla and now you're going to go get a little Kia or whatever it is. Come on, that does not wash with me.
No, there's your original budget in the first place. I don't know any Conservatives who go around boycotting people like this. It's entirely a left-wing thing, and it's because left-wingers want to close down the Conservative voice in the public forum. That's all it is.
Come on, Daniel.
And it's very effective.
Let him respond then. If you're going to say that to him, he's got to respond.
That's not true, Daniel. I mean, one of the things I love about our country is we've got different political persuasions. We debate it, we argue, and at the end of the day, that's why you don't hear me saying, don't follow through on Brexit. It's the same principle in Scotland. The vote to remain part of the UK happened. The SNP can't go around asking for a second round. Brexit was lost. It kills me to say it. You can't overturn it. You've got to get the best deal. And come on. I relish our plurality.
Meanwhile, you won't buy... It's so plural, you won't buy a pint off a pub landlord who doesn't agree with you.
This discussion is not going anywhere helpful for me. So.
I have to say, I do notice, though, that this whole kind of boycotting thing, I do feel it comes predominantly from the left. I recall, quite some time ago now, one of the producers here at GB News, he was in a barber shop having a haircut. Halfway through the haircut, they got onto the conversation of GB News. The fella told him, oh, yeah, I work at GB News. The barber said, right, that's it. I'm not doing your hair. He made this fella leave with half a haircut. Who does that?
Well, that's obviously very unkind, unhelpful and not sensible.
Well, it's very something. The words that I would use, I can't use at tea time, so I'll just shut up and move on. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I will have some of your thoughts on that. But also, I want to talk to you about the protest. Did you see it? It started as a protest. I think it's fair to say it descended into a riot. You're seeing, if you're watching, pictures there of a riot van being burnt out. Within seconds of the protest even beginning, though, by the way, it was already being smeared as a far-right protest. Anyway, what do you make to it all? The whole kind of housing migrants in hotels. I mean, come on now, something has to change, doesn't it? What will it be? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Daniel Moylan is a Tory peer in the House of Lords, and Kevin Craig is a former Labour councillor and a CEO of communications company PLMR, who's just told me he wouldn't go somewhere where he had a disagreement with the owner. And I wish now, I bet you sit there and think, why have I even got into that conversation?
I do.
I know. I have those feelings. I have those feelings every day. I can tell you, don't worry about that. Right, there's a very important topic I want to make sure I've got enough time for. So I will come back to some of your comments in just a few minutes because lots of you have been in touch. But did you see the goings-on in Liverpool? 15 people were arrested after it started off as a protest, I have to say. And then it did, I think everyone would agree, really, it did descend, didn't it, into what some are calling a riot. A police van was set on fire. Officers were attacked. It wasn't good. I mean, I don't know what anyone thinks you're going to solve or fix or advance by doing those kind of things. I felt very sorry for the police officers when I was watching those scenes unfold because, you know, these guys are just doing their jobs. It's not their fault that this ridiculous policy is in place of sticking people who, quite frankly, who have no idea who they are in four-star hotels. It's not their fault. So I really don't condone the attacking of our servicemen and women. I think that was, quite frankly, appalling. But what I also don't condone, by the way, is as the second this kind of protest started, it was immediately smeared as a far-right protest. I don't think it's far-right to actually have a concern about who these people that you're putting up in our neighbourhood. We don't really know who they are. We don't really know what their intentions are. And we have a concern about our safety of perhaps our children. There's nothing far-right about that. I would say that's far common sense. Anyway, what do you make to it? Lord Moylan?
Well, first of all, there can be no defence for rioting and the sort of behaviour we've seen and the attacks on the police and setting fire to police vans and whatever. Yeah. So no defence of that whatsoever. But I think it's really interesting, and I've seen this in other things, how the press completely jump straight away to their particular narrative, their favoured default narrative, without actually asking people. Some of these people, you know, could have been asked to give their views on what it was that was motivating them, to try to understand rather than condemn. In the first place, we want to understand. And I believe that the original people who turned out were not rioting as such. They had the protest, they had concerns. Maybe the way they conducted themselves was insensitive, but the rioting people came later. And I think it would be fair to give people a chance to say what their concerns were and try to express them.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when they started, I don't know whether it's demonstrating outside an hotel where people are staying is obviously fairly threatening, even if it's something that has legitimate concern. So the first thing you might do is, you know, ask for meetings with people and whatever, rather than actually demonstrating in the street. But the point I'm trying to make is they should be listened to and we can understand what they're saying. Second point is the government is aware that this policy in hotels isn't working. It's not working financially. And it's not working in terms of communities. And they realise that they're being hammered for it. And I think they are trying to do something about moving people out of hotels, but it's very, very slow. And again, the civil service is letting people down. They're all over the place. We don't see them actually achieving very much, despite the money spent on their USB cable.
Yeah, I've got to say, I will repeat what I already just said, but I do not condone nor support at all the attacking of public, you know, police officers and all the rest. I think that is appalling. But I do worry You know, this is the first protest we've seen on this scale, and I worry that this is going to be the first of many. I don't want it to be, but I worry because I feel the public mood, and it's not going in a direction that's positive and healthy, I can assure you. Your thoughts, Kevin Craig?
Well, I think around the country, and it isn't just in this area of Liverpool, I mean, there are many, many members of Parliament of all persuasions who are dealing with a lot of constituent anxiety about the use of hotels for asylum seekers. You know, there was a very close associate of Daniel's old boss and somebody you admire. The MP's name is Conor Burns, very close to Boris. He did an amazing debate the other night in Parliament about his constituent in Bournemouth who was murdered by somebody who shouldn't have been here, right? It's happening in Peterborough, Dover, lots of swing seats around the country. So I think whatever your views on it, how dare you, as you both have said, lift your hand to our brave policemen and women. And I think people have a right to voice their anxieties, you know, but do it in a democratic way. Don't do it with violence, intimidation. But I don't think...
What democratic way? So if you're someone that lives in an area that's had these very nice, previously four-star hotels that were used for weddings, etc., such was their beauty, you've now had them pumped full of people. You don't know who these people are. You don't know what their intentions are. We're told, oh, these are really scared, vulnerable people. But, I mean, if you're that scared and vulnerable, why would you leave your wife and your sister and your female kids, etc., at home and just cross yourself? But anyway, whatever. So you don't know who these people are. And you're saying, well, why don't they make their concerns known democratically?
I'm saying, well, you can do that in all sorts of ways.
Like what?
Well, you can ask for meetings, you can go to see MPs, council leaders, you can do petitions, you can demonstrate and you can cause a fuss. But what you don't do is incite violence, and you don't lay a hand on our policemen and women.
Yeah, but I would say, I wasn't there, but I have seen quite a lot of footage from people that were there. I would say the vast majority of people that attended that protest were local people. So let's be absolutely clear, by the way, the local area is pretty much, is it fair to call it a safe Labour seat? These are Labour voting. They're not far-right people. They were concerned family people. They were just what I would call good, decent people that had concerns. I worry that what then happens is that people come from wherever and then they boycott this and they do things like creating the violence, setting fire to things and all the rest of it. But I'm repeating myself, but I get frustrated by these labels of far-right extremists, far-right extremists. It is not far-right to want your children to be safe, especially in their own hometown. Kevin?
But specifically, Michelle, sorry, Daniel, it looks like, does it not, that the people who used physical violence against our brave policemen and women were of a far-right persuasion?
I don't know. What does it look? What
well,
do you mean?
That's what I understand from reports. I don't think any reasonable person should try and shout down others' concerns about the use of hotels in their town and asylum and immigration, because there is concern about that and how it's being managed. But the number one issue here was the violence against our forces of law and order. How dare they?
Yeah, it is. It's wrong. But I just think that calling Merseyside, for example, far right is a bit laughable, really. And if you are doing that, just to try and shut down opinions that you disagree with, then have a word with yourself, please. Let's see. I was just about to read a comment from Dave then, but it made me laugh. I shall keep that one for another day, because I'm not sure it is sensible for tea time. But such a strength of feeling, I have to say, about these protests. You know, I don't know how this is going to end. Daniel says that the current government is indeed serious about getting hold of it. I'll leave you to decide if you agree with that or not. But for now, that's all I've got time for. Kevin, Daniel, thank you for your company. Thank you at home. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The new week has got off to a fairly fine and dry start for many of us, and that will largely continue into Tuesday, but there is a change on the way thanks to these weather fronts that are gradually going to push their way in for the middle part of the week. For now, though, it is this high-pressure centre that's across continental Europe that is still largely in charge. So throughout Monday night, there will be a good number of clear intervals. This will allow some fog to form, particularly across southeastern areas of England, could be quite dense here. It will also allow a bit of a frost to form where we hold on to the clearest intervals, but further west we'll see a bit more cloud fringing into Northern Ireland, parts of Western Wales and England, so holding the temperatures up here a bit more. That cloud will continue on and off throughout the day on Tuesday. In Northern Ireland, parts of Western Scotland may produce the odd bit of rain, but further to the east, once that fog does clear its way off, will be another fairly fine day with some sunny intervals coming through. A fairly brisk breeze across western locations as well, but they're coming up from the south, so it is going to be a fairly mild day. Parts of North Wales, North Cornwall, Devon, around 14-15 degrees Celsius. Again, we'll have some clear intervals overnight or Tuesday into the start of Wednesday, so another risk of some fog and frost further east. But it's those weather fronts that are going to start approaching for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, as we move towards dawn on Wednesday. Throughout the day, we'll then watch those as they move further towards the east. It could be heavy in places first thing, but it will tend to fizzle out as it moves further east. So most of England and Wales only really seeing some patchy rain, and actually the far southeast staying fairly fine and dry. We'll see further weather fronts wanting to push in throughout the rest of the week, but our focus is really on this low pressure centre that could bring some fairly strong winds to the north for Thursday night and into Friday. But it is going to stay on the mild side throughout. See you later.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is.